What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Money Peach Podcast, episode 139. This is going to be a fun podcast because how many of you who are right around my age, I'll just say I'm in my mid 30s, okay, who have parents that you're supposed to probably start talking about money with, and how do you have that conversation with mom and dad about money? Now, we've done shows in the past where we've talked about how to mention money, finances to your kids, but this is a little bit different. This is asking your parents who wiped your butt when you were a kid how to handle the finances, especially as they get a little bit older. So this is actually what Andrea and I are kind of going through right now with our grandmother. We're going through this. And Andrea had mentioned to me, she said, you should talk about this on the show. And I said, I know just the person. I have Cameron Huddleston on the show today. She is the author of Mom and Dad, We Need to Talk. It's how to have essential conversations with your parents about finances, how to have those tough conversations. So Cameron, thank you so much for coming on the show, talking to the Money Peach audience here about this very sensitive, very tough, very sometimes awkward conversation about mom and dad and money. Thanks for being here.
I am so happy to be here. Can't wait to have this conversation.
So jump right into us. Tell us, why did you write this book? I mean, how did you become a subject matter expert on talking to the parents about the money? There's lots of people out there that are teaching people how to talk to kids and teenagers and young adults about money. But really, there's not a lot of people talking about the conversation where right now we're kind of going through it. It's difficult. Where did you come up with this kind of becoming the subject matter expert?
Personal experience. And it's kind of funny because I didn't have these conversations with my parents and suffer the consequences and realize that people need to be having these conversations. I'm a financial journalist. I have been for a long time, and I didn't realize how important it was to have detailed conversations with my parents about their finances before there was a need to have these conversations. And that's what most people do. They wait until there's the crisis, and then they have to scramble. And emotions are running high. And the last thing your parents want to talk about is their finances, but you got to figure out how you're going to deal with the situation. You don't have any information. This is what happened with my mom. She was 65 when she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. I was 35, mid-30s.
Yes. Most people in their mid-30s, like myself, aren't necessarily thinking that conversation is going to happen. And then you kind of got thrusted into it because 65 years old, usually don't think of Alzheimer's happening at that age.
No. And she is young now. That's actually not even considered early onset. So people can be diagnosed with Alzheimer's in their 50s even. So if you think, hey, my parents are young, they're healthy, there's no need to have this conversation yet, this is the perfect time to talk before there's the emergency. I had not had conversations with my mom. And imagine trying to get details about a parent's finances as they're starting to forget things. You have to play detective, and that's what I had to do. And I had to scramble to make sure important legal documents were in place so that I could legally step in and make financial and healthcare decisions for her.
So I think the number one question, I think everybody, this is what I would be thinking, and this is kind of what I am thinking right now, is, okay, so you're going to have that conversation. You have a dinner date, or you're inviting parents over for dinner, you're going to their house, and you know the conversation needs to happen, okay? What is the icebreaker? How do you open up that conversation? You've been doing this, you've written about it now. Where do people start? If people are listening right now and they're like, okay, I know I need to talk to mom and dad about money. I know things aren't quite right. They're getting worse. How do I start the conversation?
There are a couple of different ways, several different ways you can start the conversation naturally. Now, I would caution you, the first thing you don't want to do is make it look like you're looking out for your own interests. So you don't want to say something like, hey, mom and dad, do you have a will and am I in it? What am I getting? Okay. That's going to shut the conversation down really fast. You want to make it out so that you are looking out for your parents' best interests. This is about what mom and dad want. This is about looking out for them. This is about being able to help them. And this is what you need to make clear. So whatever approach you use, and I'll give you a couple of different strategies, you want to let your parents know that you want to have this conversation because you're looking out for their best interest. And in order to help them as they get older, you need some information. So right now, what's going on? We're in the middle of a pandemic. You can use this current event to start the conversation. Mom and dad, this pandemic is really making me nervous. I'm worried about my health. I'm worried about your health. I've been doing some things to make sure if something happens to me that I have a plan. I'm kind of curious, have you done any sort of planning if you were in the hospital, for example? How would we make sure your bills got paid? It's a natural way to start it because there's something going on. It doesn't look like you're coming out of the blue by asking them what sort of planning they've done. And that's one way to get the conversation started. Tell a story about someone you know. Hey, I've got a friend whose parent died without a will, and it was a nightmare for their family because they didn't know what their dad wanted, and everyone ended up in court fighting over who was going to get what. You could talk about your own financial planning experience. Hey, I listened to this podcast. It's called The Money Peach. I've been learning so much. And, I've been learning about how important it is to have these estate planning documents so you can spell out your final wishes and a will. You can name someone to make financial decisions for you. Lots of different ways to make it happen naturally, as opposed to, hey, mom and dad, let's talk about your bank account and how much money you have in there and how much do you have saved for retirement. That's going to scare them as soon as you start asking for those really intimate details. Start off talking about a bigger picture topic so that you're not scaring them away.
So that makes sense because I think again, if you approach it a little too harshly and say, I need access to your bank accounts. So a couple things come to mind is maybe your parents have some secrets that they're not ready for you to know about, right? And so the fact that you're asking them for that is almost kind of like they have to come on the defense right away. And secondly, I mean, what we're talking about now is it's kind of a little bit morbid when you say the word will or, anything like that, like what am I going to be left when you're gone, right? Those things are a little bit morbid. They're a little bit scary. I know as my parents, they're in their late 60s right now. That's not something that my parents get excited about talking about when it's like, yeah, let's talk about your will or, but one of the things that I have found a little success with is the generation that I'm in right now, we're very technology savvy compared to my parents' generation. So that's one of the ways that I've been able to open up the conversation just a tiny bit is just saying, is there anything that I could help you with as far as the online stuff? And especially right now with COVID, you have to make an appointment to go to the bank. So now online banking is becoming almost a necessity for them, which it never was. So it's like, can I help you with this? Can I show you how to transfer money? Can I show you how to transfer money via your phone? And then you could kind of, I guess, ease in that way. I don't know if you've seen that working, but that's been working with my parents. Remember, my parents remind me, Chris, I wiped your butt when you were a kid. So don't tell me how to run the money, So that's one of the things they continually say.
And your goal is not to tell them how to run the money. Like you said, offering to help is a great way to do this. And this is one of the conversation starters I mentioned in my book, offering to take a financial task off their plate. So, hey, mom and dad, have you guys signed up for automatic bill payments? Because I love it. It's a lifesaver, saves me so much time. I don't ever have to worry about making late payments. It's one less thing I have to deal with. If you like, I can help you do this. And then as you're sitting down with them and logging onto those bank accounts, then you keep the conversation going. Hey, I noticed that you have 5 different bank accounts. Have you ever thought about consolidating into one? Have you ever thought about consolidating your credit cards? Offering them help is a win-win. You get insight into their finances and you're doing something for them to make their life easier.
Absolutely. So there's more questions I want to jump into, but first, let me ask you guys this: are any of you guys living on a written plan with your money, aka a budget? If you're not living on a plan, then you have no control of your money. Your money is telling you what to do instead of you telling your money what to do. I want you to stop that right now. So what I want you to do is I want you to go over to moneypeach.com/free budget. That's moneypeach.com/free budget. Download our free budget, the same one that my wife and I have been using now for about 9-10 years. And it's the number one reason why we have been able to get out of debt, stay out of debt, build wealth, and never look back. So again, that's moneypeach.com/free budget. We have printables for you. We have one that goes on your phone, on your laptop, on your desktop. It's stored in the cloud. You'll never lose it. It'll be your number one tool you will use. You will absolutely love it. moneypeach.com/free budget. So kind of going back to the conversation we're just talking about is, so what are some of the things not to say, Cameron, when we're talking to our parents about money? I know you mentioned, hey, mom and dad, what am I getting, right? Don't say that. But what are some of the other things that you've noticed that maybe sound like a good idea, but aren't?
So you don't want to be condescending. Mom and dad, you have to watch out for these scammers. You just keep getting taken advantage of by them. That's going to put them on the defensive right away. So remember, these are your parents. You need to be respectful. Imagine if you have grown kids. Think about how you would want them to talk to you. You need to do the same to your parents. So, yeah, maybe they are getting taken advantage of by scammers, but you don't want to point that out. You want to find a way to approach it so that you're not putting them on the defensive. Using I language instead of you, as in, you should do this, you're doing this wrong. Instead, you should be saying, I am concerned. I would like to get a little bit of information so I can help you out. If you ever need my help when you get older, that's another good thing to keep in mind. Don't put them on the defensive. Don't issue ultimatums. If you don't give me this information, I'm not going to help you when you get older. Okay. That's going to shut down the conversation.
Ultimatums usually never work when you're trying to, build a relationship with somebody. That's one thing that I've learned is don't give them ultimatum. Doesn't work in a marriage either. So
no, exactly.
Okay. So, I mean, have the conversation, plan the conversation, start it up with things, that I'm concerned for you. I want to help you. Not here's what you need to do. Okay.
Right.
Don't put them on the defensive by saying, you don't ever want to make your parents feel dumb, right? Your parents wiped your butt. That's what my parents always keep saying. We wiped your butt. So my dad still tells me, son, I'm way smarter than you. And I will always be smarter than you. And I'm okay with him saying that because I say that to my kid too. So with that said is, if you're going to have that conversation, like Cameron's saying, I really like the idea is I language, I'm concerned. I want to help you. I think I want to help you. It's such an easy way because it's very, it's not abrasive at all. It's just very approachable. Like, okay, you want to help me? How do you want to help me? Okay. Then you can start having those conversations. So what are some of the things that, now looking back and you helping your mom with this, what are some of the things that must be in place when it comes to, okay, we're going to have the conversation, Cameron. We're going to have the conversation with mom and dad about money, but what are we going to be doing then? What are some of the things we're going to be putting in place? Because we can talk about money all day long until we're blue in the face, but what are we going to actually do? What's the action we should be taking? We know we want to have the conversation, but what steps should we be actually taking? Is it just getting a will in place or what else is there?
So if you can find out only one thing in these conversations, you need to find out what sort of estate planning they've done. And I know that sounds like something that only the wealthiest people do, estate plan, right? I have a mansion and I've got to figure out who gets what. No, by estate planning, that's just kind of a fancy way of saying, yes, the will or the living trust, but also power of attorney documents and living will documents, which are also called advance directives. Those, I think, are even more important than the will, because if your parents have not named a power of attorney, and that's someone to make financial decisions for them if they can't, and if they don't have a living will that spells out what sort of end-of-life medical care they do or do not want and names someone to make healthcare decisions for them, if they haven't done this while they are mentally competent and something happens, a stroke, dementia, once you are no longer mentally competent, you can't sign these documents. That means you or some other family member is going to have to go to court to become the conservator or guardian. This can take several months. It can cost you several $1,000s, and you are putting your parent on trial to prove that your parent is no longer competent. Like, no one should have to go through that. So you want to find out if your parents have these documents. And if they don't, encourage them to meet with an attorney right away. If your parents feel like they don't have the funds to pay for this, and this can cost, up to $1,000 or more to have the will, the power of attorney, the living will drawn up, maybe it's a gift that you want to give to your parents. Maybe they have a birthday coming up, Father's Day, Mother's Day, some sort of holiday, and you say, look, this is important. I want to know your wishes and make sure that you name the people you trust to make these decisions for you. Let me make this a gift to you. Let me pay for you to meet with an attorney and have these documents drawn up. Yes, there are free and low cost versions online, but I would really encourage you to meet with an attorney so that these documents can be specific to your situation. So important, because the ones that you find online are going to be a lot more general, and they might give too much power to your power of attorney or not enough. And really, you've paid for something that's really not going to help anyone.
So you get what you pay for, right? I'm a total believer in that.
Mhm.
So that kind of frightened me a little bit, what you said there. And that should frighten everybody listening, is putting your parents on trial to prove that they are incompetent. Who who out there loves their parents that ever would like to do this? And I like what you just said there, it's also going to cost you a few $1,000s over time to do this. So if you can be proactive and not have to put your parents through that, and you're looking at maybe $1,000 to $2,000 to set up an estate plan, depending on where you live and depending on what's going on with your parents' finances, this just makes so much more sense. And for me, what I'm thinking is, I have a sister, and I would gladly reach out to my sister and say, "Hey, sis, we need to be doing this for mom and dad. They don't have this in place. Maybe we save up for a few months, but let's you and I split it. If mom and dad have 4 kids, well, maybe it doesn't have to be split evenly, but there's an opportunity right there where, but again, like Cameron said, you have to explain why. It's not, hey, sis, it's a couple $1,000s, I need it. No. It's, do you want to put mom and dad on trial to prove that they're incompetent so they don't get taken advantage of? And by the way, this will be months and months of painstaking time and money spent when it's too late. Proactive versus reactive, in my mind.
Mhm. Exactly. And if your parents are reluctant and they say, "Well, why would I want to make you my power of attorney? I don't want to give you that much power right now." And ideally, they should be getting a durable power of attorney, which takes effect immediately. That means you don't have to go and get a doctor to say that you are no longer mentally competent. Yes, it does put a lot of power into someone's hands, but if you let your parents know, look, right now, you have the power to decide who is going to make this decision for you, or who, plural. Maybe it's me and my sister, because you want us both to be power of attorney and we have to act together. This should be your decision. And if you have this document drawn up now, you don't have to give it to me. Hang on to it and tell me where it is, and tell me under what conditions I'm allowed to start making financial decisions for you. Because honestly, mom and dad, I don't have any power unless I have that document. Your bank isn't going to believe that I'm your power of attorney just if I call them up and tell them. I have to show them proof by showing them this document.
So can you just kind
That
of summarize, what's a durable power of attorney?
Okay, so you have different types of power of attorney. There's springing power of attorney, which, as the name might suggest, it springs into effect when certain conditions are met. So some parents might say, "Oh, this sounds like a good idea. My kids don't have power over my finances now, but if I am diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, then they can step in." But the problem is, it's almost like going to court again. You have to prove that your parents are no longer competent, and if people want to, they can contest the language and say, "Oh, I think they're still competent," or, it makes it more difficult for your power of attorney to step in. The durable power of attorney, the general durable power of attorney, gives your power of attorney the most power. They can make any sort of financial decision for you. And like I said, it goes into effect right away, and it stays in effect once you are no longer competent. This is what I
Okay.
am for my attorney. She has granted me durable power of attorney. My sister is also her durable power of attorney. We can act together or we can act independently. But when your parents choose the person they want to be their power of attorney, there need to be conversations. What they expect of you and what roles they want you to play as they go forward. And so that's why it's so important for your parents to make this decision, and not to have someone down the road, when they are no longer competent, decide they're going to go to court and start managing your parents' finances.
Sure. And I think another thing just to add, and this is why we have the Money Peach podcast here, is if you're going to be the power of attorney handling or managing your parents' finances when they are incompetent, you need to be good at handling your own finances as well. Okay. And so that's why we have the Money Peach podcast. We talk all different things about money. People always ask, Chris, what's the first thing that I should be doing with money? Should I be paying off debt? Should I be opening up a Roth 401k? Should I be saving money? And I say, no. The first thing you need to do is what gets measured gets managed. You must be living on some kind of written plan. I can't tell you how important this is. It's the number one thing. If you're not living on a plan, then you don't have a plan. Zig Ziglar says, if you aim at nothing, you will hit it every single time. And it's true. So if you want a plan, you can go out there and you can go download our free budget form. It's moneypeach.com/free budget. It's absolutely free. There's also ones on the internet you can go out there and buy. They work great as well. But if you're looking for a free, easy version that you can start literally as soon as this podcast ends, head on over to moneypeach.com/free budget and grab that. What about long-term care insurance, Cameron? What do we need to know about that? I'm big on it. I'm kind of starting to see what it looks like when you have it in place versus don't. We have some family members that got it, when they were in their mid 50s, and things are going to be pretty good. We have some other ones. Luckily, they had some money set aside, but they didn't have it, but it's expensive now. What are your thoughts on long-term care?
Well, like you just said, Chris, if you don't have a plan, boy, when it comes to long-term care, you are in trouble. I tell you, if your parents don't have a plan, you know what their plan is? You are your parents' long-term care plan. And if they need care, that means you might not be able to work anymore. So important to have this conversation, but it's a tough one to have. But I will tell you that one of the ways to start this conversation is to talk not about the care, but the insurance, like you said. And I did this with my mother before she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. I said, hey, Mom, I think you should look into getting long-term care insurance, because I knew she and my dad were divorced. If she needed care, a long-term care insurance policy would help pay for that care. She took my advice. She met with an insurance agent, but unfortunately, she had a pre-existing condition and couldn't get coverage.
Oh, wow.
And then I dropped the ball because I could have used that as an opportunity to have more conversations about her finances, how she would pay for care if she ever needed it, but I didn't. And so then, like I said, once that Alzheimer's diagnosis came about, we were scrambling to figure things out. But long-term care insurance in a nutshell, it will pay for long-term care in your home by a paid professional. It will pay for care in assisted living, memory care, and a nursing home. It will also pay for adult daycare services. Long-term care will also help pay for modifications to your home. So if you need to revamp your bathroom so that you can continue living in there. Medicare does not pay for long-term care. A lot of people assume it does. Health insurance does not pay for long-term care. So don't think that just because you're going to have Medicare when you turn 65 that you're covered. You're not. And I will tell you that long-term care, the median cost of a room in an assisted living facility right now is about $4,000 a month.
Oh, wow.
A month.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
4,000.
Skilled nursing is about twice that much. Okay. Long-term care insurance, it's not cheap. You do need to be in your 50s, early 60s. When you apply, you need to be in good health to get coverage. If you do have any other serious health conditions, certainly if you've already been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, you're not going to get it. This is why it's important to have these conversations, to ask your parents, hey, have you ever heard of long-term care insurance? Maybe you should look into it. It might be a way that you can pay for long-term care if you ever need it. Now, I know some people don't like the idea of paying for insurance they might never use. So there are other options. You can get what are called hybrid life insurance policies, where you're getting permanent life insurance and you also get a long-term care benefit. So if you have to go into long-term care, you use the money in your hybrid life insurance policy to pay for your care. That leaves you with less money for your death benefit for your beneficiaries. If you never need long-term care, your beneficiaries get the death benefit. So someone's going to get the money. And I know some people like that idea. A lot more of these policies are sold than the traditional standalone long-term care insurance. I will tell you though, if long-term care is your primary concern, you're probably better off with that traditional long-term care insurance because you're going to get more for your money. You get more coverage for the premium you pay each month.
What age do you recommend, kind of a ballpark range for long-term care?
So most people are in their 50s, early 50s when they apply for coverage and get it. Obviously, when you're in your 40s, you might be in better health, but then you're paying that hefty monthly premium for a longer period of time. that life insurance hybrid, you can be older. They're a little more lax with their underwriting requirements. So
Okay.
you might be in not so perfect health, but you can qualify for that hybrid policy. Some insurers will offer policies up to age 80, that
Oh,
hybrid
wow.
policy.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So if your parents are already 70, say, they might be able to get that hybrid life insurance policy, but they probably wouldn't be able to get that traditional standalone long-term care insurance policy.
Sure.
I mean, there's some other options out there. Reverse mortgage. If your parents are really low income, they could qualify for Medicaid, which will help pay for in-home care and nursing home care. Um, but like I said, you have to have really low income, or you can do what is called Medicaid planning, where you're spending down your assets or transferring them. But it takes planning, and you should work with an attorney to do that.
Okay, so there's a lot of information that I'm sure people want to go and look up, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to Google this, I'm going to search this, and so I'm assuming you've talked about all of this in your book, Mom and Dad, We Need to Talk. It's all in there.
It is. I have a whole chapter on long-term care. I have a whole
Okay,
chapter
so
on estate planning.
walk me through the book real quick. If someone right now is listening to this and they're thinking, I need more information, my parents are of that age, I don't want to make mistakes, I don't have time to go and research it, I'd rather just have everything put together in one book where I can go and find all the information I need. Tell me a little bit about your book.
Okay, so I talk about your fears, about having this conversation, how to get past those fears, reasons your parents might be reluctant to talk, which is helpful to identify those reasons, because then you can tailor the way you want to start the conversation. I talk about how to talk to your siblings before you even talk to your parents so you can all get on the same page. I talk about the various ways to start the conversation, what you need to ask. I talk about the consequences of not having the conversation. I have a whole chapter, like I said, on the estate planning documents, long-term care, how to talk to your parents about when it's time to move, and what to do when your parents are reluctant to talk. I've got a couple of examples and stories of people who had trouble getting through to their parents and how they were eventually able to make some progress.
Okay, so I'm looking right here. You have Kindle. You have an audiobook version, a hardcover version. So most people are very familiar with ordering on Amazon. We'll put links in the show notes to anywhere you can find the book. I know there's a couple different places, but I think most people are pretty used to finding it on Amazon. But it's also located Barnes & Noble in the stores there, online there, and then some of the indie bookstores. So definitely, if this is something that you need to learn more about, and you're not going to wait until it's too late, where mom and dad are of the age, you don't have anything in place, you heard this podcast, you wish 10 years ago you would have done something, I would say take action today on this. And the reason why is I had asked Cameron, I want you to give me a story of someone that did not do the things that you talk about in your book, didn't have anything in place, and what reality looks like when you don't do the things beforehand. What does it look like for mom and dad, for kids or whoever the power of attorney is? What does that look like?
So someone I interviewed for my book, his name is Doug Nordman, and some of your listeners might even be familiar with Doug. He is a personal finance blogger. He writes about personal finance as it pertains to military members. Doug's father was ended up in the emergency room, and Doug had not been named his dad's power of attorney. Turned out Doug's dad had Alzheimer's disease, and after that emergency room visit, ended up in the nursing home for rehabilitation. Doug had to step in and make sure his dad's bills were getting paid. But because he wasn't his dad's power of attorney, the bank wouldn't talk to him. See, you can't just simply go into the bank and say, hey, dad's in the hospital, I need to sign some checks for him so his bills are paid. The bank is going to say, I'm sorry, but you're not his power of attorney. You're going to have to go to court, which is what Doug had to do. Doug spent 9 months and $10,000 going through the court process to be named his dad's conservator. He also had to pay for his dad's medical bills out of pocket until he had access to his dad's bank account to be reimbursed and to start paying those bills out of his dad's funds. I mean, Doug ended up spending $25,000 of his own money because he and his dad had not planned beforehand. He brought up the topic once to his dad, and his dad was like, oh, no, I'm fine. We don't need to worry about this. And if you ask Doug, Doug will tell you that's a big regret of his, that he didn't push harder and say, no, Dad, let's make sure something's in place. It's can be very expensive. And here's something else to consider. Your parents don't have a long-term care plan, for example. Like I said, you could end up being your parents' long-term care plan. If they don't have a way to pay for their care, that means you might have to stop working to take care of mom, to take care of dad. And I know as children, most of us would like to be able to help our parents if they need help. And my mother lived with me for a while, but I can also tell you, as someone who has been a caregiver, it's incredibly stressful. It's incredibly difficult to take care of a parent because it's like you're being a parent to a parent, and it is hard. It is really hard. So if your parents can afford professional help, whether that's someone who comes into the home, whether it's in a facility, having that trained professional who can provide round the clock care, it can really be a lifesaver. It really can. And I want to tell people, you should not feel like a bad child for if you get to the point where your parents do need that sort of care, because as long as you do your research, you find a good facility and you have the money there to pay for that care, your parents are going to get good care.
Absolutely. The name of the book, Mom and Dad, We Need to Talk, How to Have Essential Conversations with Your Parents About the Finances. Author Cameron is just walking us through step by step on what we need to be doing as adult children to help our parents to make sure that we don't go through what Doug had to go through, which he just mentioned, $25,000 out of pocket expenses and 9 months of trying to figure this out. It's almost like your full-time job trying to figure it out. All of this can be put in place beforehand if you take the necessary steps. Number one thing you need to do right now, if this is you, is you need to head on over to moneypeach.com/session 139. That's moneypeach.com/session 139. I will have a link to Cameron's book there. If not, just go into the Google engine and search Mom and Dad, We Need to Talk, and her book will pop right up. Cameron, thank you so much for coming on the show. This was helpful for not just me, but it's helpful for our listeners, helpful for everybody watching, whether it's on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. Appreciate you coming on. Appreciate you taking the time to give us some extremely valuable information that's going to save us so much heartache, but also so much money by just putting things in place. I always say the number one habit of the most highly successful people on earth they are proactive. They're not reactive. They don't wait for life or money to happen to them. They happen to life or money. Number one way you can be proactive right now with your mom and dad and the finances is to have the conversation. The best way to do that is pick up Cameron's book, Mom and Dad, We Need to Talk. Cameron, thank you so much for coming on the show. You're awesome. Appreciate you. And we'll have you come back on in the future, and maybe we could dive into this a little bit further.
Well, thank you for having me on. I've loved talking to you about this.
All right. Take care.